Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes and today I'm going to be going around the garage to hopefully diagnose some issues we've been having with Winston, the plastic Fiesta, and my dad's trusty Mark I Focus estate. Before that, we've got a few errands to run, and before that, I've got something to show you. Check this out, proper paperback old school ESCORT repairs book. I'm shocked that it's still in one piece. Need to be really careful. Now this was sent to me by a subscriber called Trev. Huge shout out and a thanks to you, mate. I really appreciate it. As I say, it's a bit fragile, so I'm not really going to be reading this book, but I think it's epic that I now own it. I didn't realise until now that Trev's actually put a little moored number plate on the picture on the front of the book. Now before we go to the garage today, my beautiful girlfriend Kat is dragging me to B&Q because I need to get some wood to fix something that I broke in the kitchen. This house came with some really cool LED lights under the cupboards in the kitchen, and then basically we needed to remove this wood because the LED lights weren't working, and I ended up breaking it when I tried to remove it. We have actually got the LED lights working now. They just needed a new transformer. But yeah, I really need to sort out that eyesore. Right, so here we are at the garage. Kat has brought Winston down, who is looking a lot less shiny than he was recently. Time to give him another wash. Now I need to have a look at a knocking noise that's coming from my dad's Focus and one that's coming from Winston when both cars are going over bumps. I think we'll move the cars so they're nearer to each other first. Right, so I've been under both cars and this is what I found. Right, I'll start with Winston. Now what I noticed is when I put this lever bar in between the anti-roll bar and the wishbone and lever it, that does sound similar to the noise that we sometimes hear coming from this car. Now the anti-roll bar's got these bushes in there, I think they call them D bushes, and they're not expensive, so I'm going to change them. Yeah, the wishbones and the drop links have been done on this car relatively recently.
Yeah, the wishbones and the drop links have been done on this car relatively recently.
Now this gearbox mount does seem to me like it's got a bit too much play in it. Do seem to be able to rock the engine quite a lot. I don't know if it's showing up on the camera, but there is definitely the beginnings of cracks starting to form on the rubber bush. So yeah, time to replace that, I think. But it's good that I did find a few things that don't look quite right, because then it means we might actually be able to fix the problem. On to my dad's trusty Focus estate. We haven't put a set of wishbones on this car yet, and if I put a pry bar under here, that to me does look like it's moving a bit too much. Now obviously when you do the wishbones, it's advisable to do the drop links as well, and when I wiggle this drop link, it is actually knocking at the joint there. If you go the other side, similar story on the wishbone. Loads of movement up and down. So I'll have to speak to the owner and give him the bad news later. For now, both cars will have to continue driving around with their knock-in suspension. Into a new day, and I'm round the garage with Esther, my ST170 powered Mark I Escort. Now I'm going to carry this video on properly once the parts have come for Winston, Kat's Fiesta and my dad's Focus. But for now, I've got some good and bad news about this car. We'll start with the good news, and those of you who watched the last video on the Mark I will already know this, but I have now purchased another 6-dial dash. At the moment, I'm switching around the speedos because these clocks came with a 110 mile an hour speedo, and I've got the 130 mile an hour speedo from my clocks. I'm also going to be using this piece that I repainted, but I don't think I'm going to bother for now worrying about the aftermarket fuel gauge. So for now, I'm just going to leave the original fuel gauge in there, and I reckon it will give me some sort of reading anyway going through the sender that's in my alloy tank. It might not be accurate, but I've got a sight tube on the actual tank anyway, so as long as I keep an eye on it, it'll be fine. But the really good news is that when I sort of tested the temperature gauge in these clocks, it worked. A couple of people said how they thought the wood looked good, but I'm definitely getting rid of that. I don't like the wood. Now, before I tell you the bad news about ESTHER, there is something that loads of you pointed out in a previous video, and that is the extension bar and socket on the diff plug. Yeah, sometimes I like to blame my mistakes on the fact that I'm an amateur, but that is just stupid. Huge thanks to everyone who's continually pointing out my mistakes. I really appreciate it. On to the bad news, and as the title of this video suggests, we've had a bit of a crasharoo. Now, this car's not on the road yet, and I actually crashed into one of the many security measures that I've got in the garage that I keep ESTHER in. Now, it's not great, but it's not that bad, and luckily my good friend Rob has said it'll be no problem for him to sort out, and he paints Porsches, so I'm sure he'll be able to do it to a good enough standard for this old banger. Right, back to ESTHER's new clocks. Now, loads of you were leaving your suggestions in the comments of the last video that the Mark 1 was in, mainly because you didn't watch till the end of the video and you didn't realise I'd already bought these. But yeah, I really appreciate all your advice anyway. And there was one person in particular who gave me a really long sort of description of how the voltage regulators work and all that. So yeah, massive shout to you. Now, I'm not really going to think too much about what is wrong with the old clocks and why they don't work and these ones do. I'm just happy that the temperature gauge seems to work on these clocks. What I'm going to do now is put the 130 mile an hour speedo in these new clocks along with this front cover. And I've got a bit of perspex here as well to replace the glass. So I've got the clocks all together and fitted. As you can see, I'm getting a little bit of a reading on the fuel gauge, and the fuel is quite low. So I'm interested to see what that gauge is going to say when the alloy tank is full. Running pretty sweet on a set of brand new original Ford spark plugs. So after about 5 minutes of running, the gauge is starting to go up. Yeah, I'm not going to leave the engine running for too long, but that's definitely working better than the old gauge did. So we'll see where it gets to by the time I put the car back in the garage. So that's where she's sitting now. Seems to be working absolutely perfectly. So I could have solved the problems with my temperature gauge, what, a year or more ago, by just buying another set of clocks. Yeah, I haven't fitted the LED bulbs into that set of clocks yet because there's like these blue bits of plastic attached to the clocks here, and with those in place, these don't go in. So until I find out whether I'm going to use this casing, which has obviously been butchered to fit the VDO fuel gauge, or the new casing, I'm not going to remove those things from the new casing. But yeah, I'm just over the moon that the temperature gauge is working now. A whole week has passed and I'm back round the garage with both plastic cars. Kat's here with me as well. Before I crack on with what we're going to be doing, I'll just show you the parts. So, Dad's trusty Mark 1 Focus Estate is getting a pair of wishbones, drop links, and while I'm in there, I'm changing the track rod ends as well. And this is the lower gearbox mount. For Winston, we got some new D bushes for the anti-roll bar, and again, this is the lower rear gearbox mount. So in there is the anti-roll bar D bushes. It's just a couple of bolts holding it down, and you've got one bush either side. So apart from getting in there with the socket, this shouldn't be too difficult. All right, so there's a bit of a better view from under the car coming from the back of the anti-roll bar, but yeah, you've got one bolt there, and then there's another one in front of the anti-roll bar, which I haven't figured out how to get onto yet. One down, 3 to go. Yeah, so I managed to get on the front one with a deep 13mm socket. Not much room to grab the ratchet though. Not with the camera in the way anyway. That's 2. Oh my god, Winston's already got a prop shaft tunnel for this exhaust to run through. Winston wants to be rear-wheel drive, Cat.
No, he doesn't. Leave him alone.
He's already got a prop shaft tunnel. Looks like I've got fuel and brake lines this side to get around. Yeah, these flexible ratchet spanners are pucker. 3. This one's awkward. 1/16 of a turn at a time. And 4. Alright, so with all those 4 bolts out, I think there's just like a clamp here. Oh, the anti-roll bar literally just moves around, so we definitely won't need to undo the drop links. I suppose I've just got to get this clamp off here. That'll be going back on. Try and wrestle this bush off of the bar, turn the bush upside down and pull it out. Doesn't actually look that worn. No. But that noise when we was wiggling the anti-roll bar was definitely the same noise as what we're getting when we go over bumps.
Yeah, the wishbones and the drop links have been done on this car relatively recently.
Right, the way these were, the slit was at the back of the anti-roll bar, so that's how I'm going to put these ones on. Probably doesn't matter, to be honest, but so we'll put them on upside down. And then we should be able to flip it round. And then this clamp goes back on top. And that's ready to bolt down, but I'll do the other side first. And that is the last one of the bolts done up. Not a difficult job, but definitely fiddly. Needed a different combination of socket length and bar length on each of the bolts. And this one here, I actually had to use a ratchet spanner on because I couldn't get a socket on it at all. All right, so what I'm going to do now is try and lever the anti-roll bar like we did the other day. And hopefully it won't make a noise. It did indeed make the noise. But what I've just noticed is the bottom ball joint on the wishbone is moving. Now, I overlooked the wishbones because we only done them about 2 years ago.
Yeah, the wishbones and the drop links have been done on this car relatively recently.
It looks like it's going to need another pair. And if I come around the other side, we've got the same story. It's just got play. And I've had a look at this bit that pokes up through there, and that doesn't move when you do get the play. So the play is definitely in the ball joint. It's not as if this isn't tight enough or anything. I'm going to get cracking with this gearbox mount. Right, so with the jack taking the weight of the gearbox, this should just be a case of undoing the bolts, taking the old mount off and putting a new one on, but we'll see. And there she goes. She removed herself. There it is, Winston's new gearbox mount. Yeah, basically when I was looking under here last week, I could just see the beginnings of cracks forming, so I thought I might as well replace it. And just let this jack back down and hopefully the gearbox won't fall out of the car. Kat's going to put Winston's wheels back on. She's slowly turning into a car girl, which is good. But as I say, it is to be continued because he needs another set of wishbones.
Yeah, the wishbones and the drop links have been done on this car relatively recently.
Time to polybush him. Polybushes last forever. Winston's getting a rinse. Right, on to my dad's Focus, and quite a lot of this stuff is getting changed, so I'm just going to start undoing everything. So obviously the wishbone's getting changed, the drop link and the track rod end. So I just had a mission trying to get this drop link off, which I didn't catch on film, but basically I had to use mole grips. Alright, just going to quickly switch over the track rod ends. Now obviously the car will need to be aligned, but I'm going to try and get it somewhere near. Now these look like they're the same length, so I've cracked the nut off already, but I'll leave that there and unwind this. As long as that nut doesn't move, I can screw the new one up to that nut and I know it's roughly where it was. That pop out? Oh my days. That is amazing. That is a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Sweet. Alright, so that is one side all together. I haven't done up all the bolts yet. I'm going to torque them all to spec. So the drop link took way longer than expected to remove, and the wishbone came out way easier than I was expecting, although the bolts did take a while to undo. Now hopefully the other side will be plain sailing and I'll be able to do it very quick. So I'll crack on with that off camera and then we'll torque everything up to spec. Right, so with the other side done and all the bolts on both sides somewhat nipped up, it's time to torque everything to spec. This side didn't really cause me much trouble, but still quite time consuming. And this inner bolt on the rear bush of the wishbone, both sides, that was a nightmare. I had to extend my bar to give me some more leverage. Jobs like that would be so much easier if the car was on a ramp, but when you're laying down and there's not really room to swing a long bar, can be a bit of a nightmare. I don't know what the torque for the drop link is. I'm not going to worry about that. I don't see how I can use a torque wrench on it, seeing as I've got to have an Allen key holding the middle still. So I've just done them up, not FT, but tight-ish. Ice cream van. So cool seeing nice new parts on this old banger. And Kat has just got back from the ice cream van. Alright, so on to my dad's gearbox mount. Really similar job to the one we did earlier on Winston, except my dad's is only held on by 2 bolts, so should be even easier. We've got one 13mm bolt there, and one 13mm bolt there. Unlike when I done Winston's earlier, the engine's moved, so I'm probably going to have to pry it over to line it up to get the new mount in. Right, so apart from tidying up, just about ready to go. Looking forward to seeing if Dad's Focus drives any better with the new wishbones and that. I'm pretty sure it will, because they were hanging. Now I was hoping to be done with both of these cars today, because things are going to start getting very busy for both of my Escorts over the next few weeks. Obviously Winston's knocking sound probably isn't going to be gone. We'll have to sort his wishbones out very soon. Well, there's absolutely no knocking noises now on the front suspension of this car, and the tracking ain't that far out either, but I will get my dad to go and get the alignment done so that it's spot on, just so that you don't get any uneven tyre wear. My lady has cooked me some steak. Thank you. Into another new day, and the saga continues with my dad's Focus. All right, I'll just bring you up to speed with the story. So when I drove this car home after doing the wishbones, it drove absolutely fine, no knocking or bangs from the suspension, which is good. And then when I got home, I remembered that 2 of the bolts on the wishbones, once you've got to the torque setting, you're supposed to give them an extra 90 degrees of a turn on one and 60 degrees of a turn on the other. So I rushed around here yesterday morning, which was the morning of the Ford show at Santa Pod, which you would have seen in a previous video. And basically I come around and got all the bolts up as they're supposed to be, and everything was good. While I was here, I thought I'd just check the torque on the ball joint bolt, and I found that the driver's side one was cross-threaded. Now, because it was cross-threaded, I was unable to undo it, so I basically put the car back together, and then I drove half an hour back to my house again to pick up Winston, Cat's plastic Fiesta, to take him to Santa Pod. And now I'm back around here trying to sort it out, and I've had to drill out the old bolt, which took ages, and now I'm going to install this brand new bolt. I got this from Lloyd's Motor Spares in South Harrow. So, with my dad's car back together, it's time for me to get back to work. I'm going to end this video here. If you did think it was any good, please do give it a thumbs up and a share. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. Click subscribe if you're new and you want to keep up to date with all my future uploads, and check the links in the description to my social media and my email address. But other than that, until next time, thanks for watching.